It's great to have you. Good to have
Good to be
you.
here, kind of.
We sit in the council meetings, and we are all very curious to know what's in that coffee cup of yours.
Coffee.
That it is coffee?
It's coffee.
It's just pure coffee, because you keep going at 11:45 PM at night, and you're articulate and intelligent, and
It's
while the rest of us are dying.
It's a 32-ounce cup of coffee, cream, and sugar.
It's a good education, right? Law school gets you that endurance.
I never drank a cup of coffee before I went to law school. I started drinking coffee in law school and
And
addicted.
it never gets over. There's like stuff coming out of it all night. There's like all night.
Would you be opposed if some vendor or person just brought in a carafe to
I
put
have been
outside?
asking since I was elected to city council that there be a carafe of
Okay.
coffee. I've never gone to a professional meeting outside of Malibu where there wasn't coffee available.
Interesting.
Although I don't know that other city councils do or not, but there
Yes,
should
I'm
be, there
buying
should
that
be
big
coffee
thing
available.
this
There should
weekend.
be coffee available, and I think we should.
Oh, but I think actually we're not supposed to have coffee in the chambers.
I know, but outside.
Thought out here, well, Bruce, you made a really good comment last year. I'm going to play this clip.
Our vision and our mission in Malibu is not to build buildings. It's to preserve the rural character of and the environment. And because of that, it is complex and complicated and difficult to build here by design. And the neighbors' rights and the community's rights need to be taken, and nature's rights need to be taken into account.
Quiet part out loud. So
Lester being an architect, maybe
yes.
not everybody knows that.
Which is, the process is complicated by design to slow development. Everybody sort of has known this for a while. You said it. What's your sense now? Is it coming back to haunt us?
I'm gonna say this, actually, the more I think about it, the more I've learned about it, I don't think the process is complex. I think the rules are tight and stringent, but if you understand the rules, you ought to be able to do what you need to do, not what you want to do, what you need to do. But I also don't believe that there ought to be an effort to make it difficult or time-consuming to rebuild a home that was destroyed by a fire. I was talking about new development there. But even new development, if you don't want to develop something ridiculous, I'll back up and say, actually, Malibu's sufficiently developed. Leaving aside the fire, Malibu's developed. If you really want to live in Malibu, not you want to live in the geographical location called Malibu, but you really want to live in Malibu, the idea of Malibu, you don't want to build a house. There's plenty of empty houses. You can buy one, live here all you want. You don't need to build a house.
It's not like there's a dearth of supply, right? They are there.
Yeah.
They're on the market. They're always on the market in the Malibu Times. I mean, you can spend half a day looking at all the available listings.
Nobody that wants to live in the paradise called Malibu wants to build a house there.
Oh,
They
building
want-
is hell. That's why.
No. I mean, they wouldn't want to add a house because then they're no longer living in the Malibu they want to live in. They're being selfish. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have not living in Malibu.
So the notion there is that the more we build, the less of the Malibu it becomes.
No, not the more we rebuild, the more we develop on
The more
top
we
of what was
develop
there
on top of
already.
what
I mean,
was there
I'm accepting we have what we had. I mean, if you want to go back 30 years, should we have gotten to where we are? No. But we are where we are. Anyone that lost their house should get it back.
I did a quick search on ChatGPT, and what is the toughest municipality to build at? And Malibu was number one, followed by San Francisco. Laguna Beach, I think, came number 6. With the numbers that we're seeing post the Palisades fire, right? I mean, are turning in planning applications or approvals. 41 folks that have received approval, another some 65 odd are in the process. And so that's 100 something. That's less than 15% of people. So the question really is the branding such that people are throwing in the towel even before they enter the game?
You and I had this discussion,
Yeah.
it's the same discussion, but it's not the exact same words, a while ago.
Yeah.
There are too many reasons somebody doesn't rebuild or hasn't gotten started rebuilding to say that it's any one reason. I actually believe the primary reason is funding. I don't believe that the primary reason is the rules. The rules have been made as easy as they can be to follow to get a like-for-like rebuild. I don't believe, and so I don't put any stock in the numbers in terms of how many people have made an application. What I care about is when someone does make an application, Are they being given what I understand on paper they're entitled to, which is as long as they stay within the like-for-like parameters, they get to move forward pretty expeditiously, or aren't they? And if they're not being able to move forward, what is the sticking point? Why are they not? Is it because they did something which I can look at the rules and say, no, you went outside, you're colored outside the lines, which you're not allowed to do, or they stayed in the lines and the city's doing something wrong? That's what I want to address. Every circumstance that someone comes to me that can show me that they colored within the lines and they couldn't go forward. And I haven't seen one yet.
So, Bruce, I mean, I've said repeatedly in city council meetings that you guys are doing everything you can to help the rebuilds, and I meant that, and I still do. Because to your point, the Malibu MMC is not overly complicated. It is complicated, but professionals actually know how to use that system and fall within those guidelines. I think there are a lot of unrealistic expectations from rebuilders who've never actually been in the design and construction industry that wanted to start rebuilding within 6 months. I mean, I told people at the outset, get ready for a 4-year process. And they kind of said, you're crazy. I said, no, that's actually how building in California is. Not Malibu, California. And so we're not way beyond the guidelines.
Do you agree with that, Abe?
No, I take the other side of that. I don't think it's a 4-year process, or it should be a 4-year process. And neither it is that in Malibu. I mean, look, the first building permit was issued, and there'll likely be a few more. If the builder knows what he or she is doing, they should be able to get a house in the next 15 months or so.
Well, that's if the builder gets the permit, but it's really the design professionals first that need to know. And we don't have...
But my point is that it doesn't have to be a 4-year process. In other municipalities and jurisdictions, it's routinely a less than 15 to 18-month process. So the question really is, why does it have to be that? And, because we have... It doesn't really. But the part which is interesting here is that there's the MMC, there's the LCP, there's the LIP.
Actually, if you're doing a like-for-like fire builder,
there is, but
no, there's not. There isn't
one or two variables.
But the rules that we're playing with, those were amended, so it governs all the fire rebuilds. And there's terms like bulk that were not in the governor's order, that were introduced in the negotiation.
The
with
governor's
Coastal
order
Commission.
does not authorize anything. The governor's order sets forth the terms by which the Coastal Act is suspended and CEQA is suspended.
Exactly.
Doesn't authorize anything. It suspends the Coastal Act. If you have qualified for a suspension of the Coastal Act, you look at the MMC and nothing else. The MMC has bulk in it. So it's not been introduced. It's there from day one. It's still there.
If you read the rebuild policies that the planning department wrote,
I don't care about the policies. They haven't been
MMC
adopted yet. The policies have not been adopted yet. They're going to be decided by the city council.
Exactly.
But bulk is in the MMC. No one has imposed it.
Okay, so if you read again the policies, and I can pull them up right now, and I may be wrong, you're typically correct when we disagree. They say something like, the MMC doesn't have a definition for bulk, but the LIP does.
You're not talking about a definition for bulk, you're not talking about a requirement for bulk.
That's true. The MMC may refer to a definition that's somewhere else.
Exactly, so the MMC doesn't have bulk.
Okay, well, so we will have to define bulk. But
or we don't have to, but this is a way where the LIP has entered the MMC in a hidden way.
I disagree.
We can disagree.
We can agree to disagree.
Exactly.
Well,
You're wrong.
Perfect.
I am actually, now that I've discussed this with planning, I'm okay with bulks right now.
This is yet another, but the bulk is, the efforts by professionals to get around the bulk requirement is exactly what's getting their clients into trouble. The rules are easy to comply with if you're willing to comply with them. People who want more than they're entitled to are the ones that aren't going to get it.
But we need to understand when bulk applies. For example, there's something that you and I were discussing where we thought that if you increase 10% of the area, that triggers your bulk increase, and that's not the case. You get your plus 10% in area, and the bulk is only when you're playing with heights, which is not the true definition of bulk as a volume. So there's a lot of things that need more explanation, more clarification.
There's still some ambiguity within design professionals and the community at large in terms of, because initially folks started with the mindset, okay, we can go 10% higher, but then when you go 10% higher, then you come into all of these things, and these rules are getting clarified. That's part of it. That's not where I was going so much.
Right.
But where I was going is, there is the MMC. Let's just put LCP and LIP aside, for instance. And at some point for our audience, I think we need to define what they are. They're like a bunch of acronyms, which is like, what the hell is this thing? Anyway, but
I never knew what they were before I got elected.
I know that there is a process that is sort of the hidden process, which is neither part of the MMC nor documented anywhere. Well, it's documented, but it's not a policy level thing. And what I mean by that is, let's say, very typically, you get your planning approval. Let's just assume that you're there.
You got a PV, you did a like for like.
You did a like for like,
Approved in planning.
PV approved in planning.
So that's
That's step one, right?
This is step one.
You get PV approved in planning. Now you're excited, people are celebrating.
Now you're in the building.
Now you have to go to building. So the first thing that happens is you ping someone in the city, and then you get this checklist, this very long checklist of things that have to happen, grading plan, geo and this and that. It's an incredible checklist with a bunch of caveats and footnotes that saying it may or may not apply. So that's step one, is then you get into a discussion of what is applicable in your case and what is not applicable in your case. Then you start hiring your design team, your consultants, to sort of build your design submittal package, so to speak. Now, your design submittal package is ready. The next step in the process is you set a meeting at the Rebuild Center.
Before you move on, let me back up, because I'm not doing this, so,
Yeah.
but if I were,
Yeah.
given what I understand about the laws, the planning and the building, I would hire an architect from day one that knows whether I'm going to have or not have geological type issues that need to be addressed, as well as whatever other building type issues are going to need to be addressed. And I'm not going to get my plan. Not going to get my plan and then go assemble a team. I'm going to hire someone who assembles a team and then develop a plan.
There is dependency because unless you have your design or your envelope approved, you can't really engage the other folks.
But
You
there's
can't
no
at risk, and
no-
they can do work prior to seeing the design.
there's no point. There's no point in
You can always
designing.
do borings without a design.
There's no point in designing a home that won't be able to be built. So the first thing I need to find out at the same time as I'm figuring out what I want to build, whether I'm going to be able to build it.
There is nothing that cannot be built necessarily. It's question
matter
of
of cost.
It's a question of cost and the complexity, and that's where it gets. It's like, okay, if you have wide open spans and you have a lot of glass, the geologist and the civil engineer is going to recommend differently and study the land differently than otherwise, than if you have a single story, sort of very straightforward structure.
Well, I was thinking,
right?
like, if I live on a landslide area,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to bother submitting a plan until I know that I'm going to be able to build, that I can afford to build to a way that's going to be stable where my house was.
For sure.
I mean, I agree with Bruce, and completely, because I think it always falls with the architect. I mean, that's kind of because of my education and my career so far.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got some calls today from people asking for a recommendation for a builder, right? They're like, oh, I want to see what I can build like for like. I said, I could refer you to a builder, but that'd be a waste of time until you have an architect who can draw something for a builder to look at and give you an informed cost estimate. But that's the general sense of the population out there, is they rely on contractors to give them advice way too early. Like, you should talk to the architects, the engineers, and I know it's a lot to take in for a layperson, but if you bring on that expert advocate, which is what an architect is supposed to do, they can cartoon out the whole process within 1 week and then tell you when to bring on the right consultants at the right time ahead of PV approval, but not too soon. So once they get the PV approval, everybody's under contract, ready to start, and there isn't the contractual
still
delay
cannot technically
followed by the
start.
design delay.
They still cannot technically start because a structural engineer cannot start designing
Until the geotech is done.
Until the geotech is
Exactly.
done. And the geotech, while they can do some initial site visits and all that stuff, which, by the way, any site visit is going to be like $1,000.
You want-
So you want them to come in once you have your site plan and your design reasonably vetted.
Okay, but unfortunately, look, we are where we are.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's unfortunately a fire, but once you get past that, super unfortunately, the properties that are mainly impacted
Yeah.
are on landslides, they're on the beach.
Yeah.
Many
Yeah.
of those beaches are wet. There are all kinds of building safety complications that are
Yeah.
not the result of, first of all, they have nothing to do with the municipal code.
Yeah.
They got nothing to do with the staff in Malibu. They have everything to do with Mother Earth.
Yeah.
Right?
And the building code.
And the building code, which we have no control over, it came to us from the state of
There's a
California.
few things that the building official has discretion.
Yeah, like alternative building methodology.
Okay, and nobody has yet to identify for me a specific situation going, from this fire where someone is trying to do something that the building
Exactly.
official is exercising discretion in a manner that prevents them from doing something if they exercise
It's actually
discretion
doing the
in a different
opposite
way.
right now. It's
That
trying
is
to
a
help.
boogeyman right now. It's not a real thing that can be identified, a specific problem. It's a boogeyman.
Yeah, it's case by case. Yeah.
I want to sort of go back to the process, and this is not so much about the safety and the integrity of the structure. That, everybody's 100% on board. The work that needs to happen
Actually, they're
to build
not.
this
They're
solid
not.
structure.
So many people want to skip that, assuming that it's safe.
I don't know if they can though, because
They can.
I
Of course
don't
they
think-
can.
Skip what?
Well, no, what I'm saying is I don't think there'll be any.
Right? A lot of people are like, oh, my slab is fine, screw geotech, I just want to build
Yeah,
on that
No,
slab.
but
There are a
but
lot
at
of
the
people
end of the
saying that.
day, there won't be a structural engineer that'll stand. Like I've had so
Yeah,
many
it's
conversations with folks,
certified,
like
yeah.
guys, if you're on the bluff, get ready to put caissons. Because if I were going to spend $2 million to build a structure, I want to go into bedrock.
Exactly.
Okay.
If I'm living there, I want it to be safe.
If I'm living there, I want to go into bedrock or study. So I think, most folks will get past that. The point I'm coming back to is the whole process, right? I mean, you assemble the team, you have a conversation, then you get sent back with a bunch of stuff, you come back, you have a second conversation, then it gets farmed out to the consultant sends you back, another 100 points of correction and so on and so forth. So this process is frequently extremely daunting for folks, right? And it's not a ding against city staff at all, because I've now worked with them a lot, and I think they're honestly trying to do their best. But the process has evolved in a manner where even when all departments agree, just to get the permit, you gotta go to this department, you gotta go to, all of these departments, and then you gotta process a payment. Even from the word go, like building and safety says, okay, it'll take about 2 weeks to actually get the permit in hand, something like that?
Well, in order to pull the permit, you mean?
In order to pull
you
the
have to
permit.
meet with the permit technician, you have to calculate the fees, you have to sign all your affidavits, covenants, and.
Well, I mean, that's all
Exactly.
administrative process. I mean,
But then in
speeding
LA
that up-
County, you don't have to spend that much time.
Well, it's 'cause it's
overcomplicate
digitized, I know.
Well, no, they don't ask for covenants or affidavits every time you
I
brief.
have a lot of friends who lost their homes in the unincorporated area,
Mm-hmm.
both in Woolsey and in this fire, and they're telling me the same, they're identifying all the same problems you're talking about.
It's not like this.
Yeah, the ones I'm speaking to are.
Okay, same thing, they have to sign affidavits for
No, no,
almost everything?
they're saying that they don't get responses, it takes forever to get things done, there's constantly new requirements, and they're not being given any help.
So
They're
far, I
telling the
got
same
one
exact
approval
thing.
in 1 week in unincorporated. It was like, it's
Okay.
been
LA City and
how many-
unincorporated are operating at a different pace. And
I
it's
mean,
not that.
And we can disagree with Bruce, by the
It's
way.
not unincorporated.
He doesn't
I'm
like.
talking about unincorporated, Sons of Mason. I'm talking about Sons of Mason.
I mean, that's pretty
They're,
ridiculous. You got one in 1 week. So you submitted and then 7 days
It was like,
later-
hey, can you indicate if this is that? Yes. Okay, you are cleared. You can move into building and safety in
Yeah.
1 week.
Okay, so it was the PV, not
That's
the
the
building
PV,
permit.
yeah.
Yeah, the planning thing. It
But we're
was in
not
1
talking
week.
about that.
We're talking about the whole thing right now.
But I'm telling you how process works in a way. Like they are not as they are more go go go. This
Yeah.
is clear. You're good.
No one's
you're
asking
within
for an
10%.
affidavit
And
after
what-
the PV prior to the
They
PV.
ask for an affidavit right now even to represent your client.
That's normal.
That's
we're-
no.
so
Sometimes
It is in healthcare.
What were the
I mean, it's
what were
called a
the-
letter
We're in
of
LA County,
authorization.
Darren.
What were the
That's what it
facts
used to
of
be.
your PV that you're referring to that you got in a week?
The facts?
Yeah, what were the facts? What were you doing?
Existing plus 10% on a hillside on a landslide area.
Okay, well, hillside landslide go to building, right?
Yeah.
Not to planning. What were you do? What, if anything, were you doing different than what was there?
I was doing all the whole house is different, much different. This is a different design.
Well, same thing. I mean,
Yeah, it's like in
the
Malibu.
house that I'm personally building on a landslide, on the bluff, the planning approval came within a couple of weeks. That's okay. That's, again, I mean, be that as it may, I think here we have made a conscious decision to weigh more stuff in planning as a lesson learned from Woolsey, to increase the planning process so there aren't issues identified down the road. It's debatable, but that's the process with which we are working.
And there's
through
one good
right now.
thing. These meetings with when we now meet with Geo, with environmental health, with public works, with fire department during the planning phase, and that's great. That's one of the things of the rebuild center that is amazing because you can flag things later on. We're also forgetting with process, it's also minimizing risk and making sure you're not overspending money on things that you have to change later. This is a very important factor for rebuilders. You don't want to pay your engineer or your sales engineer to design something that then planning is telling you to change. So you have to minimize the amount of effort and work and consultants work as you go and you make sure that you can build what you're proposing.
And that's the strength of the rebuild center. I mean, I went there twice in May. I came out of there knowing what I could do, how I could do it, and when I would need to sign on all the consultants.
So how can we?
So I'm fine.
So I just
But that's
had a
the,
really
that's
good
the
meeting.
point that I think we were
Yeah.
trying to make is when you go to the Regal Center, you come back with a set of inputs,
Yeah.
right? And then you send your package. But the Regal Center or the people there aren't processing your file. That's getting sent.
Yes, they are. That's what I was told.
It gets sent to Either if you're on the coast, if you're on the beach, you'll typically get sent to True North or Bureau Veritas, which if you're on the land side.
That's for the building review.
That's for the building review. And that's where there is an enormous number of comments.
Explain this to me, because I went there a couple days ago and met with Yolanda and Tyler, and the name escapes me of the other gentleman who's kind of the in-house manager.
Andre?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I asked the questions about what do you need to do outside the building, the rebuild center, to get your PV, and what do you need to go beyond the rebuild center to get your building approval? Is someone there capable of granting it? And I was told, whether it's true or not, I was told it's soup to nuts for the PV, and that you can get and that there's someone there with a stamp, and that to the extent that there's a
Well, of
question,
course,
they might have to talk to Yolanda, but that you
No,
can
they
get
can't.
your building approval there.
No,
You can't.
No, you can't.
Okay.
Well, you can get your approval there, because Yolanda is the one.
What do you
who's
need to
gonna-
leave for the road? What do you need to leave there for?
I think that's where the
within the
disconnect-
city to get
That's
your
where the
approval?
disconnect is.
Okay.
Is that when you're submitting your plans, which has been vetted for weeks in advance by multiple meetings through the rebuild center,
Mm-hmm.
and then you finally put the package together, you upload it on the portal, then all of that gets shipped out to, if you're on the land side, typically to Veritas, or if you're on the beach, it gets shipped to.
What are they? You'll have to excuse my
They are,
ignorance.
they are,
Plan
they are the
review
consultants, they are the consultants.
Review
that are-
consultants.
That are reviewing the building plan checks, so they're making sure that you got all the notes, your structural plans are fine, and so on and so forth. So there are two sets of consultants that we typically work with, right? I mean, it's.
And are they the same people that are doing the work elsewhere in the city?
Yes. Yeah.
They're doing regular
Well, they're
CDP
doing-
review?
Yes, that's true, and they're doing work for other
Other jurisdictions.
municipalities and jurisdictions as well.
Okay.
Right, so the problem that happens is, you have conversations with folks in the rebuild center, it goes really well, but then it gets packaged and it's sent over to somebody who doesn't know you from anybody else. You know, they're probably reviewing a Malibu permit, and the next thing they're reviewing is a Laguna Beach permit. And you're getting back these corrections, which is, in many cases, like 100 plus, set of corrections that you got. Yeah.
Corrections to your plan or corrections to what you need to do to complete building and safety?
Construction plans.
So it's the building
It's
permit.
It's the building
building code.
I want to make sure we're
Yes.
talking about
It's building
because it sounds to me when you talk about it, you're always coming back to you're rechecking the plan. No, you're not. The plan is the plan, right? Plan's been approved.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In
Now
plan.
you're talking
So
about.
that stays as approved.
In zoning,
States as a-
but now you
You're
have
not
to see
being-
how you're
not-
building
But
it.
you're not being given additional questions as to why you got your plan or whether you can have your plan. You're being questions now about how you can build what you planned.
Well, there's also
Which
ingrading
is why I
reviews.
said you should be hiring somebody before you submit your
Well, there is
plan
some dependency
to make sure
there.
your plan can be done economically.
That's something that Archistar can do too, which is another topic.
Correct, but there is some dependency, because in some cases, there might be a comment that might cause you to change your plan.
Exactly. Like
Yes,
that.
because what you planned wasn't
Constructible.
feasible from a construction standpoint.
Yeah.
And it's not the responsibility of the planners to help you understand what you're going to need to do from a building standpoint. That's the responsibility of your building
Fair
team.
enough, fair enough. But the point that we're making is that this process of working with the rebuild center and putting together the package, but then having an outside entity look at it, sort of almost negates the goodnesses of working collaboratively together, which is the intent.
Okay, so how can that be fixed?
Well, it is
Well, that's-
impersonal, right? That's the issue, that it's some phantom team that nobody ever meets.
There's no
working
background.
on
Or
stuff.
what is the solution? What is the other option? Because there's going to be a problem of
Right.
how many permits we're going to be able to process, which is, by the way, the rebuild center is great, but it's basically it's empty right now.
What is the alternative?
Should it need to be farmed out at all? If it's a straightforward like-for-like rebuild, should it need to be farmed out at all? Because,
but
You need personnel is the thing.
I'm sorry. What if it's a straightforward like-for-like rebuild have to do with building? Because again, you keep morphing them together.
yeah.
If it's
Yeah.
it could be a brand new CDP, it could be a like for like. You still have all the same building issues.
I mean, if
With the
it's a
code.
simple structure.
You have to demonstrate that you meet
But the
with
structure
code.
doesn't have anything to do with the land.
The thing is, I don't think anything in Malibu can be qualified as a simple structure,
That's
to
right.
be honest. Like between us, is there really a simple house in
I
Malibu?
disagree with that.
There might be some in Big Rock on the cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, in the,
Yeah, I mean,
the flat
if-
zone
if-
of
if you
amazing.
have
This is what I agree with Bruce. There you go, first time.
If you have a fairly flat, lot, less than 20% slope, and you're far away from any ascending or descending slope, it's a simple structure. If it's a
Yeah,
single
there aren't
story,
many of those in
if
Malibu.
a single story house, well, I mean, I think, Big Rock, probably 2/3 of them are like that.
But that's also if the design is simple. We don't know what these designs are.
I think
It
that-
could be a simple lot with
Yeah.
some crazy design
But
with
that's,
structural
that's
gymnastics.
centrally what I'm getting at, is even for the simple structures, you are being subject to a process that is equivalently complicated, let's just say, for the most involved structures as well. Like if you're building a 10,000 square foot mansion, hanging from a hillside, you're going to go through the same process as if you're building a 2,100 square foot home, which is a Rand-style, single-family home in a single story with conventional footings.
When you say you're going through the same process, you mean you have to check the same boxes.
Well, you gotta check the same boxes, but this whole aspect of, working with the folks at the Rebuild Center, then getting comments back, then having, 2 or 3 rounds of reviews, that's what's lengthening the
That's
process.
just
And those
normal
rounds also,
process,
the problem is that they sometimes add more
I'm
corrections,
still
which
trying to understand.
are being better.
This is all the building code and satisfaction of the building code, which is a state-imposed.
It's a normal process.
But just
So
different
what,
degrees.
what does Malibu have the ability to do to get around the need to satisfy the building code through these outside consultants? We can't hire a huge building staff. Can't afford it, right? I mean, what other small towns have a building staff?
Well,
that can do all
LA City,
these things?
what are they doing? You have experience with them. You can feel how they are.
I mean, even
LA
LA
City
City
does. I
is
mean,
shopping
LA
out to plan reviewers.
But
in
they
other
are,
counties.
they have the same building code, California
No,
building code.
LA City is one of the largest economies in the country.
Their budget is like not really worth.
But the review, the
Remember,
review
don't
degree.
forget, we get to keep 7%, a whopping 7% of our property taxes. If Malibu actually
Wow.
got to keep its property taxes,
I don't know if it's,
But we're
I don't
agreeing
know if
here.
it's so much a financial issue. Bruce,
It's not a
because-
financial, exactly.
Because we are paying money to the consultants, so I don't know if
no,
it's.
the issue being not farming it out. To bring that in-house would cost a lot more money.
It's
Because
the
you
same
gotta pay for
money.
downtime.
Yeah, FTEs are way more expensive than consultants.
Well, I mean, at the moment, right now,
Or,
there are
you know,
like 20,
disability.
Yeah.
there's like 23,
insurance.
there's like 23 or 25 open recs. I think that the issue is the ability for us to recruit. It's not
Exactly.
even, they've been trying to recruit like crazy. It's just the inability to bring folks.
And
on.
consultants is more flexible. We have a high demand, we hire them. We don't have that much demand, we fire them. So there's pros and cons, but what we can do is we can tell them, hey, turn the heat off a little bit.
That's true. You can order them to make it simpler rather
Well,
than.
so that's what now.
But that's against
I
their
don't know
code.
if that's
mean,
I don't know if that's the
it'd be hard
answer
to get
necessarily, but this is
person
what's
to
happening in
review.
LA, right? I mean, I had a lengthy conversation with the building inspector that showed up. We have been instructed to let anything close pass, and that's the reason there is 250 permits issued in Palisades, and we got 1 issued in Malibu, because we are in Malibu dotting the i's, crossing the t's. Now, is that good or not? I don't know, but the point that I'm making is, it is at the moment scaring people away from even attempting to go through it.
To promote, to help, to try to push people to rebuild. What do you think we can do better in this case?
I don't think it's
to motivate
I don't
them,
think it's appropriate to push anyone to rebuild.
or to motivate them, or to say, hey, you should, because after Woolsey, we only rebuild what, 40%? So we were losing people.
But look, I've never built a house.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even dream of doing so. I've bought turnkey houses when I've had to buy a house.
As most people would.
My house was
Stop agreeing with
partially
yours.
destroyed a couple years ago, and it was dreadful to have to go through the process of fixing what was destroyed. And the house is again destroyed now, and I'm not going to do it. I can't do it again. I can't take it.
It's too
There's nothing you can
emotionally
do.
draining.
But it's not that. It's also financially, emotionally, time, everything. Someone has to be willing to do that. I suspect that a great number of the homes that are not being rebuilt are people that have never built a home and have no intention or desire to build a home. Never would have built it in the first place. If it hadn't burned down, their next house would have been one they buy that's already built. Okay? On top of that, many people have fair plan. They're underinsured. They cannot afford, unless they get more money, more income, to rebuild a house, and that was their largest single asset in their family. And again, I'm in that same boat too. So we can't solve the motivation. And it's not a lack of motivation because of these things. It's a lack of motivation in the simplest jurisdiction to build. People don't want to build homes. There's too many decisions to be made. There's too many people to deal with. It's too time consuming and draining. There's decisions to be made that are difficult. People don't want to do that. That's why they bought houses that were built in the first instance. Anyone who wants their dream house and has the capacity to do that would build their home. Most people don't build their own homes.
I mean,
On top of that, you don't have the money. Right? Yeah, maybe half the amount of money it's really realistically going to cost you from soup to nuts to get done. Well, most people don't have a well that they can go to get that money.
So there's nothing that we
So
can do.
what can you do about that?
So there's nothing.
This
You're
is-
going to be the mayor now. We need to show some
Well,
sort of
no, I mean,
commitment to
well,
improve
okay,
things.
I mean,
I
what I'd
would
say is
maybe-
they have done everything they can. I've said it in
I don't
public.
think so.
I-
We can always do better.
We can do better, but the city council has done
Sure, we can
everything
build
they
that-
can.
well, I
We
think
can
all
build
of
the
the
house.
do better.
come
We can
back.
think
I
out of
think-
what you were intelligent people. We can think of things to,
I think
and
all
you've
of the
done it
points-
already, by the way. You helped the beachfronts with the FEMA thing, which was incredible. It was thanks to you, and it was you who convinced
let's
the other
focus
And I'm
on
not
Right,
sure.
I mean,
I'm not sure we made the right decision.
Well, but at least you made a bold
But it
decision,
was-
and
yeah.
you have motivated all these 300 victims still have a chance thanks to you. What else can we do like that
Well,
to
and-
help
and
We're
let
them?
me-
doing those
let me
things.
make another
More.
point.
There's nothing we can do to get people money. There's nothing we can do to make it easy to build a house.
Well,
okay,
yeah, we can improve the process.
those-
Well,
but
architects
those
can.
aspects-
No, don't
Those
blame
aspects are across the board, right? I mean,
I'm
not blaming,
Those
I'm
aspects are
empowering.
similar across the board in Malibu, Palisades, Altadena,
Everywhere,
whatever.
that's right.
But we are seeing a decisively low percentage of interest in applications in Malibu than in Palisades. So how do we explain that? How do we reconcile that? That, I mean, the only way, at least maybe there are other opinions on it, is that people are, so there's a branding, there is a mental barrier, that Malibu is the toughest municipality to build in, and therefore forget it. You know, there are people, there is more activity in lot buying and things like that in other jurisdictions even than in Malibu. So how do we explain that? It's like purely from a ratio, from a percentage standpoint, we're seeing far fewer, level of engagement.
Well, first of all, what are the statistics percentage-wise?
For issue, 1 out of 700. In the
One out of
Palisades,
700, and in
No,
Palisades
not
we
one
have
out of-
250 out of
out of
4,000.
4,000.
So we have,
5%.
0.5% to 5%, right? It's an order of magnitude difference. And that has to translate, I don't have the numbers for how many people applied, but it has to translate, I'm assuming similarly, to the number of people that applied as well, right?
Okay, I know a number of people who lost their homes, but it's anecdotal. I don't know 700, okay? It's anecdotal. But I do know that there's many people in Malibu who lost their homes where they're generational homes that were built a long time ago by, these people don't have the money to rebuild that house. I suspect there's far less of that in the city of Los Angeles, where property changes hands all the time, where the fires were. The cost of building a house in Malibu is going to be more than the cost of building a house in Los Angeles, just because of the kinds of things that go into building it here, and because of the complexities of the geography.
Well, Palisades
So I
and
don't- I
Malibu,
don't-
they're
Palisades and Malibu, I
hand in
think, are
hand.
That's not
equivalent.
true.
Palisades is hillside.
I'm not,
Palisades is
I'm not
he's
real
the
familiar with the
expert.
Palisades, but the
He's
ABC
building in
neighborhoods,
both.
this is a huge
I'm building-
Yeah,
flat
it's easier to
area.
build in the Palisades.
I'm
I mean,
building
go up there, they got
Altadena.
wide streets, they have spaces
say
for
that, Baron.
contractor
You don't know.
layout. I do, I've driven
No,
through it.
no,
If
no.
I was a
That's-
contractor,
I'm working
the
there, that's
logistics
what I'm
there
saying.
wouldn't be as complicated
It's
as
the same.
PCH.
It's
No,
very
It
similar.
really isn't. Okay, on the beach, it's more expensive, right? Because you got the seawalls and all that stuff to deal with. But when you go on the hillside, a Palisades property is no different than Malibu. Because
Okay, so-
yes, we have the landslides and stuff, but we aren't doing anything
And
construction-wise.
what
to affect the
percentage of
landslides.
the properties that burned in the more rural part of the Palisades have permits been issued for?
We don't have the breakdown for that.
Don't you have one
We don't
already
have-
yourself?
Well, yes, I mean, that permit, I mean, that's.
Like months ago.
They were right on
Months
it
ago.
though. They were the.
And also, and there's the other factor,
Look,
Bruce, too.
I'm going to say again, I am far less interested in understanding how many people are doing something than I am understanding what is stopping somebody from doing something, what is
yeah.
getting in the way. I'd like to understand what's getting in the way, because if it's something that can be solved, I'm all for solving.
Exactly.
I think it's intimidation of the process.
Intimidation, and also the Palisades
It's
are.
intimidation of a process which is actually intimidating. That is the point.
That's
And-
the architect's job to reveal how it's not so
Well,
intimidating.
architect
not
can
everyone
do
has
all
the
they can.
privilege to spend
the
money on
architect-
retainer for an
The architect
architect.
can do all they can to reveal and describe the process, but that doesn't make the process less intimidating. At the end of the day, the homeowner still has to do the DocuSign to pay the retainers.
It has to be clear before you pay retainers. That's the goal.
I mean, that's truthfully what I'm trying to do with MRTF. We're trying to clarify
There
the
you go.
process.
Okay, there you go. So
And the level of engagement we are seeing is just starting to be extremely disappointing and shocking, right? In terms of how many people are coming forward, where to engage.
I mean, people are
let's do
waiting
this.
to see how the things fall, how the chips fall. And
Either they're
also,
waiting or they're checking out.
or they are saying, I think I'm gonna sell. And that's what we wanna avoid, right? In the Palisades, they're building a lot also because there's a lot of developers who are buying lots and building. So
I said from the beginning, actually, I don't want to dissuade people from selling if that's where they're going to end up 3 years later after going through a process that they realize they can't afford to complete. I don't want to enable people to think that they ought to be pursuing something that they're not going to achieve. So you got to be able to get from beginning to end, or else you shouldn't bother leaving the beginning. You should sell your property and move on.
Pessimistic
After
attitude.
the Woolsey fire, I became somewhat of an expert on the insurance issues and recognizing the complexity. And my advice to every single person that lost their house was: first thing you do, if your insurance company will cooperate with you on a total loss, you take your money, you go buy a substitute house, you live in that house.
But then which
let me
money?
finish.
Which
Let me
money
finish.
do we
Let me-
have?
Let me finish.
Yeah.
You don't spend a penny of your ALE on someone else. You put it into your own equity.
What's an ALE?
Alternative living expense.
Okay.
Because you'll get it. They have to pay it over to you. You buy a substitute property. The insurance company is required to pay you to either rebuild or replace. Replace. Find another home that's equivalent to your insurance policy. Buy that home, go live in that home, get your head straight. Keep your lot. Decide whether, first of all, keep your lot for a while because it's going to become more valuable a few years later. But get your head straight, live in your home will increase in equity. And while you're doing that, see if you can afford to rebuild your lot.
That's pretty sound
If
advice.
you can afford to rebuild your lot, mortgage the home you just bought with your insurance money, and get the money to do your construction. When you're done, you have two properties, one that increased in value, which you can now sell and move back to Malibu. You're not going to do it overnight, and you can't do it if you can't afford it.
Well, I mean, I think that makes.
3 to 5 year process.
I think that makes a lot of sense, but
But
the processes
sales.
are intertwined because the sale price. I mean, look, this is the other struggle. We were talking about one of our besties on the pod here, but the land is up for sale. They aren't getting the value they thought they were going to get, and of course, all land is getting discounted at least 25, in some cases 50%.
Right.
This is as of today, August 2025.
As of today, August 2020. And in Malibu, the discount is even greater, right? So people are now, they're cornered to sort of have to sell their lot at a steep discount, and then they're taking whatever money they can getting out of insurance. So, but that's all, whether you sell the lot, whether you rebuild or whatever, it's all still coming back to that process, right? Because why are lots moving quicker in Palisades?
It's more of a sound investment, and there's probably a lot of developers who
What
can
can we-
bank on a timeline that they can rely upon. Thus, they're buying to
What can we
build
do
out a
to
lot.
help with
And then
certainty?
going,
I'm just not buying. I mean, look, it's a terrible situation, and one of the biggest problems is people refusing to accept what is. What is a horrible event occurred which burned a lot of homes, and people don't have adequate funds to rebuild their homes. No matter how simple you make it or how complex you make it, they don't have the money to rebuild their homes. People that have money are going to have another place to live while their experts build their home for them. And they can take their time and make the kinds of decisions they have to make, and then they'll eventually move into their home that they rebuild. That is a small percentage, unfortunately, of the owners of the homes that burned. If you owned a $20 million house on Carbon Beach and you're a 100 millionaire, you are not going to have a problem with these complicated problems. You're going to buy another great house to live in, and over time, if you want to live on Carbon Beach again, you're going to have your house rebuilt, you're going to move back into it. The problem is lack of insurance and lack of experience in dealing with this, because people didn't buy expecting to have to rebuild their house.
And we always burn in Malibu, which is a
So
crazy
yes,
thing.
there are things we can do on the edges, and we've done as best we can, I believe, with the planning process. And actually, there's still room for improvement, and I'm still looking for it. And if anybody brings me issues, I want to examine them. And let's examine the building issues too. But one of the things we can't do is change the building rules.
no,
No.
and that's the central point here, is that there is the MMC, which is what it is, process that is really adding time and cost to it, which is unbeknownst to folks who are making the policy level decisions. That is the number of handoffs that are happening.
Okay.
That is the number of pure exchanges from a transactional perspective. And if you map the process, the Malibu process is like 48 steps or whatever, and the LA process by no means a benchmark that we should look at and say, wow, this is an amazing process. Not at all. But in the case of fire rebuilds, it is being enforced or executed in a manner which is different than sort of the traditional rebuilds. And that sort of goes back to how we started this conversation, right? I mean, our process has been intentionally made more complicated to slow down new development. And that seems to be translating.
That bleeds into the rebuild
That is-
efforts.
Well, that's why we need different people doing the PVs.
Where do we
and
find these people?
different people doing one than the other, not different people than we have.
I think that's a great idea.
Just
I mean,
split the department.
But my
into
understanding
two.
is that is subject, with the exception of you're now telling me we've got outside building reviewers, which I did not know. That actually is what we already have. The PVs are being issued by people in the rebuild center that have nothing to do with the other CDPs in the city.
The building-
And the people in the city don't have anything to do with the rebuild center.
But these same people are the same departments and they follow similar rules and processes.
Yeah, exactly. I think the glue
He's not
is
agreeing with you right now, huh?
the glue is the process.
I'm not sure what the process is because I
Exactly, because you don't know.
But what I heard Bruce just say is he thinks that the planning department is going to focus, half of it's going to be on rebuilds and half is on CDPs, traditional development projects. Is that what you said?
Actually, I believe it's mainly outside consultants that have been hired to work full-time in the rebuild center that don't do anything outside the rebuild center. They have nothing to do with traditional builds.
We have the best planners and the rebuild center.
And the planners that work in City Hall are not working on rebuilds. They're not,
They are separated, but they follow the same procedures.
Well, they
have
have the
to-
same laws. Of course they do.
But
They
again,
follow the
their
same law
laws
and
are
they have the same
complicated.
leadership. They have the same leadership, so it becomes
No, they don't.
difficult.
No.
It's the
to
same
have-
thing.
No,
at the end of the day.
there's actually a manager within the rebuild center that is overseeing what's going on there and only goes out of there if there's a problem.
The planning, if there's an edge case that has to be decided in, let's say, planning, that'll go up and be adjudicated at the same level as the person dealing with the CDPs. That decision is not being made within the confines of the rebuild center.
What about the traditional?
An edge case, okay, let me give you an example, right? So, okay, your roof overhang is 6 foot, that's considered your setback. Let's say you had a non-conforming setback.
Yes.
Now you're moving your wall down there. Are you increasing your non-conformance? So let's just say you had a roof overhang and you had a wall like this, right?
Yes, I know what case you're talking about.
There's a couple of
Right,
them.
No, okay,
So that was, so that's a little bit of a nuanced one, right?
It's not
It's
nuanced at all.
TDSF.
It's not a nuance at all. There's a rule.
It's TDSF,
Well,
therefore you
okay, so
can.
the adjudication of that happened at a level outside of the rebuild center.
It did
That's
not.
the point. No, it did indeed. That adjudication happened by the head of.
Because it was a disagreement?
Yeah.
Because also a new policy that was being discussed
Okay, well,
live.
yeah.
so what's wrong with that? That
No, there's nothing wrong with that. What I'm
It's the
saying is
process
that
in which it was resolved.
There's codependency.
Okay,
It's not
okay, wait a
completely
minute,
separate.
wait a minute. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you have an overhang, I wouldn't have known what the rules were till I looked at what the rules are. It's real
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
If you have an overhang, the overhang is part of your TDSF. It's literally as if there's an invisible wall there,
That's
right?
right.
So if you're doing like for like, the house that was there before, that had a wall there basically, that's the size of the house that was there
Yeah.
before, and you can build that house again plus up to 10%. It's a simple rule.
And now question
Maybe
to you.
somebody didn't
Well,
understand
but
that, maybe an architect didn't
Can you-
understand that,
that's
or
the
maybe a
point,
planner
exactly.
didn't understand that, but now the answer's understood. You had to have
Where
a
did you
problem.
read this? Where did you read this interpretation of the overhang? Which code section?
I didn't read it. I was told by
Ah.
a senior planner that
There
that's
you
how it
go. We
works.
cannot do this all the time for each project.
Well,
We
I
need to
don't
have it in
know,
advance.
I'm not saying I
building review happens. It is always.
need to have it on paper.
An interpretation of the
There is-
rules
there
to
is-
fit the project.
There
There's
are-
always interpretation.
Agreed, but
Yeah.
that's the point. That's exactly the point that I'm making, is that as much as we try to separate out the rebuild center, there are ambiguities which always require escalation to the folks that are sitting in the main building.
Fine.
That have to decide.
Yeah.
So you're fine with it?
Well,
That's not a
if-
streamlining.
If there's an ambiguity that needs to be resolved, obviously it needs to be resolved at the head. At the
But
top.
everything is ambiguous by design.
You can't have somebody. No, it's not. I
Yes, it
disagree
is.
with you. It is not.
I disagree too.
I happen to.
Building
I-
Of course you disagree.
I'll tell you why. It's
disagree.
Building code is not. Building code is
This
not
isn't
going to
building code. This is
force.
No.
planning. I'll tell you exactly why.
It's the LCB and
I'll
the
tell you
NMC.
exactly why it's ambiguous.
It's on purpose.
I'll tell you exactly why it's ambiguous. Because people that aren't lawyers are writing these laws.
You are a lawyer, and
And every time I try to take the time to examine every word and get it right and make sure we have as few ambiguities as possible, nobody's willing to put in the time because
let's
they're not
do it. So
lawyers.
this is what we can do now. You as mayor, let's reduce this
Rewrite
ambiguity.
it all.
No, yes, of course.
Well,
That process will take longer.
4 years. Let's start today. This fire
I
rebuild is going to be
think
10
in
years.
principle, we are aligned that we need to have the rebuild center be its own focus because we can't
I
have.
agree with you, but if they
the
get to
same
a
people-
point, but
Yeah.
if an issue is presented to them for which there is no clear answer, that answer does have to be resolved at a higher level.
There is a law that-
Because they can't resolve something one way and have the people in City Hall resolving it a different
Agreed.
way when it's the
Agreed.
exact same law.
We agree.
And the problem is there is a lot of that right now.
Okay.
So, and then the next part of it is not at all a rebuild center thing, which is the plan check. That is all pretty much being done outside of the rebuild center, right? So that's where we are encountering even more sort of delays and processes and steps and
What's
things like
plan
that in the
check?
back end. Plan check is
Outside
building-
consultants.
Plan check
Sure,
is
no.
building and safety when you're reviewing your construction plan, so to speak. right?
Phase two.
And that's where you have Cotton Shires in the mix, who are A set of consultants, Geo, focus on Geo.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because again, when I went over there, I asked that question. I said, do we have a geological person here that's not over there? You know, here in the Rebuild Center, not over at
The answer is
Seagull?
yes.
The answer is yes, that's right.
In Geo, you do actually have people sitting in the Rebuild Center, their offices have moved.
And they
to the
don't
Rebuild
do, and
Center.
they don't do other CDPs.
Well, that I don't know.
I was told that. I was told.
That I
it's-
Well, they have legacy ones.
I was told it's dedicated.
It's dedicated, but of course there's prior projects before the fires that they still have to work on.
And that's its own issue, right? Because
Yeah.
they
Which is
have
okay.
been so baggaged, so to speak, with the CDPs and the other historic issues that it's very difficult at times to separate out
Well, actually-
the issues and look at it from an objective viewpoint.
If it were, well, first of all, I agree with that. And I
Yeah.
said that to the people I spoke to. I said, I'd rather see someone new come in here doesn't have the history of working on CDPs in Malibu in general.
And-
And we were engaged in a debate. The answer I was given is, well, what they're doing is basically math. So it's not gonna matter whether they're used to doing that math for a CDP or they're doing that math for a rebuild, because there's really only
Well,
one
it
answer.
is math, but it depends on how you look at a number. You know, is a coefficient of 2.9 a good number to build on
That's
or
building
not?
code.
There is no
I am-
building code.
It is
I-
engineering, but engineering reviewers have an emotional component considering they're
Do
human
you
beings.
do you
Can they
remove and
pull their
recompact-
emotion out?
Do you
Who
remove and
knows?
recompact? This is a real conversation that is happening as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remove and recompact 3 feet of dirt and compress it to 90%? Or do you go all the way up to the fill and yank out 8 feet of dirt because your lot is on 8 feet of fill? Now, the slab hadn't moved for 60 years. So what do you do? And that is where, if somebody has the first-hand experience of dealing with the slide and stuff, it's like, holy crap, man, just yank everything out and recompact and do all these things. But a geologist coming in from the outside, 3 feet, 90% compaction, do a direct shear test afterwards, you're gold. You're fine.
So
You know,
yeah, it's
you
those
can't do it.
preconceived issues.
It's a
that are
conversation
Kind of
between
tarnishing their interpretation.
Your consultant and the city's one, so far I have to say that the city, I think that they are great.
Well, I think the city is doing what they can. I mean, I genuinely believe it. I mean, there is, you know, a lot of folks, there's all sorts of rumors swirling around. There's some nefarious agenda of not letting people rebuild on the beach and stuff, and we want to squelch that right away.
There's not.
There's not.
No,
There's
not.
absolutely
I
not.
haven't seen any of them.
There's absolutely not. But I think what I'm trying to draw attention to is the hidden processes that are underlying all of these things that are not documented in the MMC or anywhere else.
But that's just the
But
nature of
yes.
building
It
rebuild.
doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
always been that way.
In only Malibu.
Exactly.
No,
It has
it's not.
always been
It's
that way by design.
Not only Malibu.
And only
I've-
Malibu.
I've designed and permanent houses in Newport Beach, Santa Monica,
Newport Beach, how long it takes
Beverly
you?
Hills.
It takes you 2 months. Here for
To things in the law.
Yeah.
I mean, the securities laws and corporate laws are very complex and subtle, and there's ambiguities. But someone who practices securities law day in and day out, or corporate law day in and day out, and I do that, understands them, knows when they're going to have an ambiguity that needs to be resolved, knows how to deal with their ambiguity.
you go to the Securities Act from 1933, and then you read it, and then you know which definitions are good and which ones are not.
That's right.
Okay.
So if you're an expert, you know how to apply it. No layperson should ever try to do a prospectus or a quarterly statement or an annual statement. They have to have a lawyer that knows what they're doing. And then when they do, more times than not, far more times than not, they're going to get it right and it'll be fine. Now, so the layperson doesn't need to and ought not to even try to understand law. Same thing with the tax code. I don't even try
But
to
it's
understand
clear
tax
what is
code.
exempt,
I
at
hire
least,
an
with the
accountant or I
securities.
hire. Okay. Now, by the same token, if there's a problem and you have to deal with the SEC or you have to go into court, the lawyers are going to be in control of it, and it's daunting. It's very daunting for the client, but the client, that's unavoidable. That's the way the system works.
Hence the
And you can't
professionals.
change it. That's right.
It's a global, it's a federal thing.
So I don't agree
This is all
that it's our
money.
responsibility or even an appropriate objective to try to make it easy to understand to the average person who's going to have to rebuild. All they need to understand is they have to hire experts. I don't agree that it's our responsibility to try to make it easier to comply with the building code, because it is what it is, and the experts know how to do that.
See, but that's adding the barriers, right? In
I
the sense
disagree.
that there is.
I don't see any barriers.
That shows
I'll
lack
tell
of
you what the barriers
compassion
are,
to the
because-
residents.
because-
I am in the
because
same
the
boat.
rules
It's
are-
not
That
a
shows
lack of
lack of
compassion.
compassion
because
for the fire
rules are-
victims.
Because the rules are
I'm a
difficult.
fire victim. It's not a lack of compassion.
No,
it's
because
acceptance
look,
of reality.
here's the practical
It's
effect. of it.
accepting what happened
No,
and moving
here's the
forward.
practical effect of it. Because the rules are difficult and at some level ambiguous, there are fewer people that can dissect it and walk you through the process. It's pure economics. If there are fewer people, guys like, the Malibu architects are charging typically 3 or 4 times.
Well, that's
than
their
LA
own
City
act
architects.
of compassion.
I don't think it's fair. I'm not playing that game.
Go find an outside expert who can come in and do it
But
for the
that's
right
my
price.
point.
That creates the
That's
mafia.
my
That creates there's only a few who we know how to do this, and that's in the detriment for the residents.
Look, this is anecdotal, right? I don't have stats to back it up, but a person building in the Palisades is spending, before the groundbreaking, about a third of the amount of money that a person in Malibu is spending. And it could be 50 grand to 150 grand. I mean, that's.
Because they don't need expediter, maybe, they don't need.
Nobody needs an expediter, let's be honest.
I could
Nobody
go buy the
Expeditors are
house I
worthless.
have
Well, they
in the
are-
valley and
they
pay
are.
1/2 of what my house is worth. We live in an expensive neighborhood.
And that is true. That when you say that,
I think, well, I mean.
In the
of
bigger
course,
cities,
but,
what it is, but-
Living in paradise, that's the tax we pay.
Keats
but
is the
that
same
is-
price here as it is down there too.
But I think the point is that this paradise tax, let's just call it,
Yeah.
is changing. Is it not going to change the paradise or the inhabitants of the paradise? We'll still have the structures, they'll just be occupied by different people.
Well, unfortunately, the fire has done that.
They've already left because their houses aren't there, right?
oh, but can we
bring
fix
them
it?
back?
Can we? This is a boat that has a hole. Can
And-
we
and-
fix that hole?
There are things we can fix, and there are things we can't fix, and we're working on trying to fix the things we can fix. I think one thing we did that's a great example is the water tanks. Okay, we
Yeah.
pushed and pushed, and now the fire department is allowing where you don't have adequate water flow that you can substitute that with a water tank. We did that.
That's good.
Yeah,
Okay?
no,
And people are still complaining that we haven't done it.
Well,
you
Norm
did.
wants you to do it for the
No, some people are
fire
still.
victims.
Some people who lost their homes in the fire are still complaining we haven't done it. They just don't understand the rule because they're not talking to someone who
We
knows
need
the
to
rule.
improve communication, put it on paper.
Yeah.
Well, it's also
Yes,
not
you can
the
always do
city's
better.
job to overly communicate because
Yes,
I think,
it is, it
I
is.
think they
No, it's
already
not.
are.
No, we can't-
They're putting
we can't
out the
over-communicate.
information. You can't expect everyone to read everything they write. You want to, but the city's doing a great job of publishing what's happened. I think so. I mean, I came into Malibu in
So,
January.
I think the
like,
city's doing-
what
Who
the
is
hell
this
is
guy?
happening?
What
Then
have
by
you-
March,
what do you-
April,
what do you-
May,
what-
that's up to Dan. Where is
I think
Danny?
this is a pretty, I think this is a pretty.
What happened? Danny's gonna hate you.
I know.
I appreciate.
I had a horrible morning.
No, you
So
don't
I
have
appreciate the way you think.
What did you eat for breakfast? We should have maybe switched our positions a little bit.
I know.
It's like, we're like
No,
two teams.
look,
like, sorry.
you show me a problem. What I mean by a problem is where the rule is X and the city's making them do Y. I want to know about
They're
that.
not, and that is not a criticism at all. That is, in fact, none of this, what we are stating, is a direct criticism of the city or the staff. It is just a hidden process that we, the constituents, the residents, have actually endorsed and created over the years.
Over time.
And
Over
not
the
completely-
30-year process.
This is really a criticism of that, but it's really more of the process that we ourselves have kind of created and are being subject to. The question is, can we do something about it now? If we do it, then would it open the spigot to allow more development to happen?
There's nothing that we're going to do for the rebuilds that will open the spigot outside the rebuilds.
Perfect.
I mean, not if I have anything to say about it, because I am all in favor of finding new things, new exceptions, new interpretations that can be applied to the rebuilds as long as they're safe, and make it explicitly clear that these are being applied to the rebuilds and they do not apply to new builds. And I think we've already done that to a large degree, and we can keep doing that. But complain, and you're not complaining. Identifying problems isn't the way to go about it. Identifying solutions is. So if you have an idea for something that can be done, we can examine whether the solution can be accomplished or can't be accomplished, whether it makes sense what you're suggesting. But just to identify the problem doesn't get me any.
Love the debate, and Bruce, as always, we appreciate what you're doing for us. We really are a voice of reason, bringing to bear a lot of the things that we wanted to see, and of course, water tanks is a great example of stuff that is happening and continue to happen. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Do what we can.
It was brave of you.